much. Thank you. Please have a seat. I get all confused because the President of the Senate said, "Governor, I like your blue tie." Chief Justice Softly, President Alfon, Speaker Eves, members of the 126th Legislature, distinguished guests, and fellow Mainers. Tonight I'm here to update you, the people of Maine, about the condition of our great state. Everything is fine. Thank you for coming. Good night. Not so quick. Payback is really, really fun. First of all, I want to recognize a few people. And I'd like to ask my lovely wife to stand for a moment. Anne. I would not be here tonight without you. You have made Maine very proud being our First Lady, especially with your support of the military and the military families. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. To my family and friends, I appreciate all you've done, your unwavering support, and all you continue to do throughout my life's journey. Staff Sergeant Justin Middleton, the Military Herald tonight, thank you for your courageous service to our state and to our nation. Members of the military and veterans that are here tonight, would you please stand? We salute you and extend our sincerest appreciation to each and every one of you for service that you provide our country to keep us safe and free. In the balcony, you will notice an empty chair next to the uniformed service members. Chair represents every Mainer who is serving overseas, in harm's way, so we can here tonight exercise our freedom of assembly and freedom of speech. I ask that we take a moment to remember, recognize, and thank all the men and women in the armed services who wear the uniform of the United States of America. Also, it is with a very heavy heart I ask for a moment of silence, because just before I came up tonight, I was notified that Major Sanborn, the Deputy Chief of the Warden Service, passed away after a courageous battle with cancer. I had the opportunity to meet him, and you can't find a better Mainer, a better father, better human being. So I ask you all for a moment of silence. Thank you. Recently, Ann and I had the opportunity to go down to Arlington National Cemetery during the Wreaths Across America trip. As I walked through the rows and rows of tombstones, the final resting place for all American heroes, I remember one simple truth. These individuals paid the ultimate sacrifice to ensure future generations had the opportunity to pursue their piece of the American dream. It is a dream we cherish, and the freedom that marks our lives, which is so rare in the rest of the world. This American experience represents a moment in time. And folks, we must never abandon the American dream. If every one of our elected officials visited Arlington Cemetery, they would realize that political battles we wage every day are meaningless in comparison to the blood that's been shed to protect our American dream. We all recognize that the political climate in Washington, D.C. is toxic. With no solutions in sight, the federal debt grows as we speak. Many of us question whether the American dream will ultimately survive for our grandchildren, our children, and our great-great-grandchildren. It is really in danger. Yet, we owe it to our fallen heroes as elected officials to come together and develop the solutions necessary to save our American dream. We must commit to make Maine a better place for everyone, for our children and our grandchildren. So I am going to buy a lot more blue ties. Because, folks, ultimately, there is only one thing that's important in life, and it's family. And many families are struggling. With the median household income in Maine at shy of $48,000, Maine people survive on far less than most Americans. Maine families struggle to heat their homes, fill their cars with gasoline, put food on the table, and pay for health insurance. Government has not strengthened Maine families with more income, more opportunity, or reducing the cost of living in Maine. Instead, government takes more and more of our families' hard-working income, a way to serve some political ideologies and, for some, financial self-interest. The path forward offers two choices. We continue to accept the status quo, or we can make the tough decisions, roll up our sleeves, and together make Maine a better place. Whether you're a Democrat, Green, Independent, or Republican, Mainers deserve the opportunity to pursue the American dream. Last session, we took steps to improve our economy. We provided Mainers with the largest tax cut in the history, and it was done bipartisan. Despite the rhetoric to the contrary, 70,000 families, hard-working families, no longer pay income tax. 2/3 of all taxpayers in the state of Maine will be receiving a tax cut. The average Maine family will receive a $300 tax decrease. And for the average Maine family, that equates to 28% reduction. We've also reduced we've also reduced taxes for job creators, a critical step in attracting investment to our state. Unfortunately, there are those, some in this room, who would like to undo the modest reform, despite having voted for it. I'm asking you now not to roll back these monumental reforms. Let's not do it for political reasons. If we have to, let's do it for the right reasons. Let's do it for Mainers. High taxes come at a high cost, the erosion of states' economic competitiveness. My childhood hero, President John F. Kennedy, had it right. An economy constrained by high tax rates will never produce enough revenue to balance the budget, just as it will never create enough jobs or enough profits. It was true in 1960, and it's still true in 2013. Tax cuts were not the only accomplishment of our first session. Together, we eliminated $1.7 billion, 41% of the shortfall in the pension fund. And yes, while retirees are not getting an increase, the important thing is they're not getting a decrease. And that is critical. Maine families have more choices with health insurance. Over 17% of Maine small businesses received a decrease in rates last year. With LD1, we reduced red tape, we streamlined the permitting process, and we can get people working instead of applying much quicker. Maine hospitals are now paid in real time for the services they provide. Principal job creators know that my administration wants to help. My door is open to increase the business communities around the state. Folks, if you want to create a job, I want to be there to help you. However, let me be perfectly clear. I am not interested in helping those who will increase the cost of living on Maine people for financial gain. I repeat that. I want to make it perfectly clear. I'm a businessman, but I despise greed. Some will come here and take instead of give. We passed legislation to strengthen vocational education. This will ensure that Maine students who prefer working with their hands can earn the skills that can earn them a good living. We passed legislation for teachers and principals to be more accountable through performance evaluations. Unemployment is down in Maine, lower than the national average. We're focusing our efforts on rebranding the state of Maine, recognizing that products made in Maine have quality and value. We need to tell the rest of the world. Government is becoming more transparent. We exposed the wasteful use of Mainers' tax dollars at agencies such as the Maine Turnpike Authority and the Maine State Housing Authority. We not only exposed it, we cleaned it up. But we have a lot more to do. I am pleased to announce that in the coming days we will launch a new website that will enable Mainers to see how their precious tax dollars are spent. We place renewed interest in our natural resources. Farming, fishing, and forestry continue to be a top priority for my administration. We need to move Maine forward. My administration launched the business-friendly communities. This program works with towns and cities to make open for business these communities more attractive to job creators. 18 Maine communities are now members of this program. These are all small steps for what needs to be done. Because, folks, Forbes still has us dead last for a business-friendly state. Totally unacceptable. Now, we can all sit here with a red tie, blue tie, green tie, or no tie, exactly. And we can deny and we cannot agree, we can disagree with the analysis that Forbes has done. But what we need to understand is that job creators don't look at all 50 states. They look at the top 10. And we're not there. So we can deny it. We can keep our head in the sand. But guess what? We don't change reality. The only thing that will change where we are is with bold action. No one governor or one party is going to move this state forward. It takes all of us willing to roll up our sleeves and go to work. In the last 3 years, I've spoken to many Maine families and many businesses. They desperately want more opportunities, better paying jobs, more careers for our youth, and most of all, lowering the cost of doing business and living in Maine. I spent most of my career in business. creating jobs and working alongside of many hard-working Mainers. I know what it takes to expand a business and to create a business. I know what it takes to create jobs. And folks, it's very simple. The cost of doing business in the state of Maine is simply too high. For example, Alabama, South Carolina, Indiana, Texas are attracting huge investments in their states. I've spoken to many of the CEOs of the companies that are moving there. And I had the CEO of an aircraft manufacturer tell me he would love to come and visit Maine someday. But to put a plant here, we're not competitive with the rest of the world. It was that simple a conversation. We're not competitive with the rest of the world. States are giving these companies incentives, yes, but they're not exorbitant in relation to the number of jobs that they're placing in the states. Airbus going to Alabama, average pay $75 an hour. We fought, but we had nothing to offer. We shouldn't penalize Maine people for government's failure. There is one simple truth that I want you all to remember. Capital investment goes where it's welcomed, stays where it's appreciated. Improving our economy is vital, and it can only be done if we all put away our ideologies long enough to improve the job climate in this state. To do is very simple. Pay our bills, lower energy costs, reform education, make government more efficient and affordable, then we can all go golfing. When I became governor, there were hundreds of millions of unpaid bills to Maine hospitals on my desk. My predecessor left me with no plan, just an IOU. During the first session, thanks to all of your help, many in this room, we paid back $248 million of debt owed to Maine hospitals. Tonight, there is a plan on your desk sponsored by Senator Pat Flood, to pay the outstanding balance of $484 million to Maine hospitals. Hard-working Maine families have two choices. They pay their bills or they face the debt collector. It is embarrassing. People say I have a temper, but let me tell you, it is embarrassing to work for a state government that doesn't pay its bills. We need to look at Maine families and the households and their balancing of their budgets and moving this state forward. It's not that difficult. In Lewiston, we owe Central Maine Medical Center over $50 million. The results of the state's IOU program. Lewiston residents are denied opportunity to fill critical, well-paying jobs. Capital improvements in the city are delayed, and local vendors go unpaid. The IOU program is damaging the very communities that each and every one of us in this room are elected to protect and to work for. We cannot expect prosperity when we hold back hundreds of millions of dollars from the people that provide us medical services. My proposal ensures that Maine hospitals get paid. It will improve Maine's fiscal health, allowing me to authorize and release bonds, injecting somewhere near $700 million into the economy, which is badly needed. I ask you all, for the sake of Maine families, for the sake of our children, please, I plead with you, act on my bill that is sponsored by the good senator. Because we need it. We need it this spring. We don't need it next year. We need it now. Mainers need to get back to work. You know, our nation faces a national debt of $16 trillion and rising. Maine families, when they sit at the kitchen table at the end of the month, they have to balance their checkbook. They pay their bills. It's high time the federal, the state, and local government pay their bills and do the same as hardworking people. The Affordable Care Act, going into effect later in the year, so we think. We will face huge tax increases at the federal level and regulations that will have a real negative impact on all Americans. Gridlock has paralyzed Washington, D.C., and the American people and Mainers are paying a very heavy price. We cannot continue to mortgage our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren's future because politicians refuse to do their job. The policies in Washington, D.C. will result in smaller paychecks for all Americans, and particularly here in Maine. In fact, the average family in Maine is handing over $1,000 this year alone. It is not time to burden Maine families with higher taxes. A balanced budget. I'm looking to hear more good, constructive ideas on how we can balance our budget and deliver government services more efficiently and effectively. I take no pride in this budget. In fact, I do not like it at all. But I will tell you this, I have two other options. I can cut welfare and I can cut education. Or I can cut revenue sharing. Or, I suppose, we can level a high tax increase and really hurt Maine people again. That we have been doing for 40 years and still remain 50th in the country. And I just pray every night that Puerto Rico doesn't become a state because we'll be 51st. Maine's energy costs is too high. We're killing ourselves with high energy costs. Whether you agree with me or not is irrelevant. But Maine families are paying 24% above the national average for electricity. Our businesses are paying 14% above the national average for electricity. Even more discouraging is a law that forced the recent decision by the Public Utilities Commission in favor of Statoil for offshore wind proposal. This move compels Maine families and businesses to subsidize a global giant to the tune of nearly $200 million without any guarantees of jobs. We cannot afford these job-killing decisions. We need to lower our electricity prices. We cannot continue a policy of crony capitalism. We need elected officials who will stand up for the ratepayer, the taxpayer, and the folks who do pay their bills every month. Just imagine for a second if 14% of everyone's electricity bill was left in their pocket to spend for their families. We should not be forced to pay higher energy prices. To serve a greater global goal or continue to pad pockets of those politically connected. I fail to understand this reasoning. Long-term prosperity for the sake of a quick buck today is not a path to a winning formula. Just think, Maine business could invest an additional 14% to create jobs and pay employees higher wages. Bar Harbor Foods in Whiting in Washington County. The company manufactures seafood products. Mike Cody, CEO and founder, states that the cost of energy in Maine erodes operating margins, resulting in reduced profits. The reduction of profits takes away the ability to reinvest into the company for growth and to hire more people from Washington County. And there's not a person in this room that won't agree with me that Washington County is a poor county. It's heartbreaking to see the difficulty that goes on in that county because of the lack of jobs. We must compete nationally and internationally for capital. And in order to do that, we have to be competitive. We simply need to be competitive. It's very simple. It takes courage to take bold action. I'm asking you all to sum up the courage that we need to move this state forward. The average Mainer spends over $3,000 a year in heating oil. With access to natural gas, they could save $800. See, already we've got $800 of savings in fuel, $300 savings in taxes. I mean, after a while, it becomes real money. My predecessor fast-tracked permitting of wind. We're going to do the same for natural gas. With your help, with the help of the legislature, we're going to help Mainers to afford the conversions necessary to lower their heating costs. We have a plan in place that we're working on, a plan right now to put in place that will allow the state to help people lower their energy costs. I don't want to pick favorites when it comes to energy. All energy alternatives are on the table and fair game, but they have to be cost effective. They have to be able to help lower the cost of living and the cost of doing business. Woodlands, the mill in Woodland put in a pipeline at their own expense, and they're saving millions of dollars per year on using natural gas versus oil. We can do that. We can help Maine families. In the past, state government mandated what types of energy we must buy, regardless of cost. You can say what you want, but I think that is wrong. Maine plays favorites when it comes to energy. If you see a well-dressed lobbyist, special interest groups that pocket the profits, we're all for it, at the expense of Maine families. Last session, I proposed removing the 100-megawatt limitation on renewable energy, expanding access to low-cost electricity from hydropower. It makes economic sense. That's the good news. Bad news is, I'm back this session with the same bill. We need to address the cost of energy. It is not right when we forego low-cost electricity, low-cost energy for a few people making millions of dollars on the backs of hard-working Mainers. I'm urging this body to think of Maine families, not the special interests. Many people in Maine have said that I'm an angry person. I will say this, I'm a very passionate person about education. And my passion is not to attack the public school system. I speak passionately about education because it saved my life. I cannot accept, and I cannot listen, and I do not have the patience to accept children falling through the crack and nobody doing anything about it. homeless child on the streets of Lewiston, it never occurred to me once that someday I could be a successful businessman, a mayor, or even a governor. Heck, back then, I looked forward to becoming a Pepsi-Cola truck driver. Finding the next meal, a warm place to sleep, was a primary goal. However, through hard work, a lot of luck, and some good friends, education became very crucial. I was convinced that I could better my stay in life and contribute to society with a good education. I climbed out of poverty. I could have easily spent a life in jail or back on the streets. But I was fortunate. And so when it comes to education, yes, I take it very seriously. I benefited from the structure and discipline of the public parochial school system back when I was in school. The option allowed me to succeed despite coming from enormous poverty. I want every child in Maine to have the same opportunity I did to pursue a quality education. Last session, we passed charter school legislation, a topic that has become highly politicized by administrators, by big union bosses, and by people in this room. Despite the fact that Maine is the 40th state in the country to pass charter schools. States like Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Minnesota, hardly red states, have successfully been running charter schools for decades. In fact, charter schools are part of the mainstream options in American education. So why am I so hot about charter schools? For one simple reason. It's just another option. It's just another option that may work for some. Alex West is here tonight. Alex, would you stand up, please? Alex West is a student currently attending Maine Academy of Natural Sciences, formerly known as Goodwill Hinckley. Alex is from Heartland. He struggled in a traditional public school. He was at risk of dropping out. He chose to attend the Maine Academy of Natural Sciences. He is now taking classes at Kennebec Valley Community College, along with his work at the charter school. The charter school, in this case, provides Alec a brighter future. School choice should not be just for the wealthy people and the elite. Rather, Horace Mann, back in 1846, said, "Education is the great equalizer." Education is what brought Abraham Lincoln out of splitting rail and led this country through its most difficult crisis in our history. School choice benefits all kids who deserve the best education that we can provide. Giving students options such as charter schools is more than just a political position. Options involve the Maine Math and Science School, the 10 town academies, whom we all agree have been very successful. But not everybody can afford it. It's the Bridge Year program at Herman, where the high school students can earn both a high school diploma and an associate's degree if they attend high school 5 years. All students and parents deserve options, especially for the economically disadvantaged. Therefore, I'm proposing legislation to give more educational options to all children. We must fund schools that fit the student's need. I know that people are afraid of choice. In the case of Alex, we need to fund not only the charter school, but the residential portion of that school. Because if we really care about our kids, if we really want to keep our kids here, we have to provide for them. All Maine students deserve an equal chance of success, whether you're from Cape Elizabeth or Fort Kent. This is how we're going to break the cycle, the generational welfare, the cycle of generational welfare in our state. It's the way that you get rid of poverty. You don't do it by handing things over. You do it by educating, by working with people. A hands up. Despite great and committed teachers, and there are many, dedicated parents, concerned citizens, many of you here who run for the legislature to do good. The public schools, no matter what we say, are not getting the job done. Not only do we need to give our children more options, we need to improve the outcomes in our schools. I will tell you, the last 2 years, I spent most of my free time studying education around the world. I've had other governors send me information about Finland, Hong Kong, Singapore, Canada. We've got lots of information from Canada. My daughters who live there have been helpful in getting me information from Alberta, from New Brunswick. Let me tell you some facts. We have schools in Maine where 23% of the students at grade level in reading and math, and they graduate. We graduate them. On average, 32% of the fourth graders in the state of Maine read to proficiency. By 8th grade, that number climbs to 39%. Wow, that's a familiar number for me. 39%. Nearly 20% of students drop out before graduation. Those those of us in this room have been given the responsibility to fix this travesty. Far too many of our graduates are unprepared for higher education or the workforce. 50% of the kids that graduate from high school who go on to the community college need to take remedial courses. That says that they went to public school, the job wasn't done. Now the parents, who are only making 80% of the national average in income, have to pay tuition to take it a second time. Well, folks, I am proposing legislation that says if a child who attends a community college or university system has to take remedial courses in English or math, that the sending high school pays it. We'll see how much courage you have. This state spends over twice the national average on administrative overhead in our schools. In fact, on a per pupil basis, Maine has the highest district administration costs in the United States of America. I'm not proud of that. I'm not proud when the state of Florida, who is in the top 3 in educational performance, has 2.7 million children in K through 12 and operate with 56 superintendents. The state of Maine has 185,000 children in K through 12, and we have 127. This extra money should be going into the classroom. School administrators, the big union bosses. And I say union bosses because I'll tell you, there are 2 victims in the K through 12 system in the state of Maine. Our teachers, who are underpaid, and our students. And we need to be bold and courageous and put some money up there so our teachers get paid what they're worth and that there's money for continuing education for them so they can improve the quality of the classroom. Public administrators and big unions are in denial and have taken a position that simply cannot be defended with the facts. As a whole, Maine's achievement in academic growth is far below the national average. We are next to last. 20 years ago, Maine was in the top 5, and we bragged about it for 20 years. Now we're next to last because every other state has woken up. They've woken up to the Finlands, to the Hong Kongs, to the Shanghais, to Canada. And they're beating us straight up. We need to be more aggressive in the standards of our education, in the demands of our schools. We can fix the problem. First, we offer students an option. They have to be kept attentive. They have to be inspired. And we can do that. Second, we hold our schools accountable. We tell students and parents and the communities if their schools are failing or thriving. We help those that are failing. We replicate those that are thriving. Then we provide the needed resources. And I have challenged the unions on this a multitude of times. Put up some money out of the union dues for continuing education, and I will do everything to match it. You talk about getting some people angry. Tonight I'm directing Commissioner Bowen to develop a ranking system for Maine schools, as they've done in Florida and Indiana. Each school in Maine will have a grade, A, B, C, D, or F. It's high time the students know and the parents know how their students are doing in school. The fourth way to fix the problem is really quite simple. We introduce best practices to our schools. I plan to hold a governor's conference on education in the month of March. We're bringing in national experts to Maine to demonstrate what other states are doing and why we are being left behind. We can no longer stand still. We cannot wallow in status quo. The rest of the country and the world is passing us by. Instead, we must embrace the fact that we need to change. We need to work together to bring about this change. If you believe the status quo is working, you are part of the problem, not part of the solution. If you have an open mind and a desire to put our kids first, I invite you to join me for this challenge. I'll make this promise. Makes no difference what party you're from. If you're willing to put kids first, I will put our kids first and put aside the turf wars, the money, and the mascots. We can get this job done. Last session, the Senate and the House put aside their political differences and worked together to improve the laws against domestic violence. We amended the bail code, ensuring that judges determine the bail for domestic violence offenses. The Chief Justice has been just phenomenal in working with us and with the Department of Public Safety to look at ways of challenging domestic violence. We required abusers to pay into the Victims' Compensation Fund, which is resources made available to families of domestic violence. A number of other bills with stalking and risk assessments were passed and executive orders were signed. I do want to thank Representative Ken Fredette and Senator Emily Kane for their leadership on this issue, and in particular in sponsoring a governor's bill supporting batterers intervention programs. These programs are not necessarily the big answer. they're not going to eliminate domestic violence. But what they do is they're a long-term approach to fixing the problem. They require the perpetrators to invest, to dig in their pockets and pay for these courses, and they need to attend them in lieu of going to jail. I honestly and truthfully believe, having been one that was brought up in an environment of domestic violence, it was very close to home. I wasn't the spouse, but I was the child. And I really believe that we need to do something about it. I think that half of the homicides in this state are due to domestic violence, and that we all agree, no matter what party we're from, that that's unacceptable. This evening, I talked a lot about family and about the American dream. Well, frankly, domestic violence is family violence. It's a heinous crime, and we need to stand up. We, the men in this room, need to stand up and shout loud and clear that we are going to protect our women and children. One of the big issues in domestic violence is having the abusers give up their guns. Unfortunately, the enforcement is very deficient because all law enforcement has to their disposal is asking whether or not you gave your guns up. And many people will say, well, you have to get a background check. Unfortunately, when you get a background check, they don't record that you bought the gun. And so we need to do something about getting guns away from abusers. I'm going to be signing an executive order tomorrow that's creating a task force to address this specific issue. Curbing domestic violence, I take very seriously. So that's why I'm always angry. It's, education, domestic violence, energy costs. I mean, it's a terrible thing. But I'm doing better. I'm working on it. In closing, I simply want to say this. Maine families need our help. All of us. They're tired of the political rhetoric here in our state and in Washington. They are asking us for one thing, and if we can accomplish this, we will have been very successful. They are asking us for lower cost of living and opportunities for bigger paychecks. That's all Maine people are asking for. They'll do the hard work. So I have put my proposals forward. I am open for all proposals from all of you or any of you who choose to put some up. I have two very simple requests. Let's not raise taxes right now. Let's pay our bills. Thank you.